So I've been a huge fan of Brighton since they made the move to the Premier League in 2017. But with Fabian Hürzeler's side sitting in 9th place and with 4 tough games left to go, I am beginning to wonder whether we're seeing the limit of their famed and extremely impressive transfer policy. Admittedly, I have been thinking this for much of the season following a summer spending spree from the club that seemed incredibly un-Brighton in its makeup. While the club continued to pluck future stars from the relative backwaters of football, such as Stefanos Tsimas from Nuremberg or Ibrahim Osman from Nordland, they also spent huge sums of money on players within English football. Yankuba Minteh joined the club from Newcastle, and Georginio Rutter arrived from Leeds for a combined fee of just under €82 million. That was by no means the club's entire transfer budget. They've actually gone on to spend a remarkable €280 million on new players this season, and that made up about a third of all the money spent on transfer fees. As we can see in this table, aside from the summer of 2019 when the club signed Adam Webster and Neil Maupay, this constitutes a pretty big rise in domestic signings for the Seagulls. And with more money spent on players comes a bigger risk to the club's plans. Of course, this is not a comment about these individual players. Rutter or Hal Pedro or anyone else that they've signed from English clubs has typically been very impressive for the club. But the problem with each of these signings is that the profit that Brighton can expect to make from these players so much lower than they typically make from the players that they sell on to bigger clubs in England. This crucially comes with a bigger risk to Brighton because while the amount of money they're spending on new players continues to rise, the actual going rate for top tier players when the likes of Man United, Chelsea or Liverpool come calling for Brighton's players hasn't actually changed all that much in the last 10 years. When we take a look at the average transfer fee paid for the 10 most expensive signings in the Premier League each season over the last 10 years, we get a graph like this one, which showed a creeping climb from 45.8 million to 62.4 million between 2015 and 2022, before the fear of PSR rules forced English football to lose its collective mind and spend untold fortunes in the following 2 seasons. But as we can see, that figure then dropped dramatically this season down to just 57.7 million, and there's little to suggest that it will leap upwards this summer. Such a figure should probably be setting off alarm bells for Brighton, because if the going rate for their best players when the likes of Liverpool or Man City come calling doesn't continually increase with the same kind of rate as the amount of money they're paying for players to join their club, it means that the margins get smaller and they get squeezed in the middle. And when their margins continue to get smaller and smaller, it increases the risk and makes it much harder for the club to do its job on and off the pitch. Of course, this isn't just related to players signed from other English clubs. Brighton in the last couple of years have become known as a club who know how to develop and flip players for huge amounts of money. So when they now look to sign players from Germany or France or Italy, they're now having to pay a premium price. Again, we're seeing the margins between what they pay and what they could potentially make from these players get smaller and smaller. So with that in mind, you would think Brighton would be better going back to signing these relative minnows from the backwaters of football for very small fees, and then obviously turning them into top class players, the likes of your Alexis McAllisters, Moises Caicedos, guys like that. And of course the club have continued to sign those types of players, but there is still a slight problem here. When we break all of Brighton's signings down into 4 groups based on where they came from, i.e. Premier League, the Championship, top 5 leagues in Europe and then everywhere else, we get a graph like this one. And as we can see, signings made from the other, in green, used to dominate Brighton's transfer budget between 2017 and 2022 to the tune of roughly 70% of the club's total budget. But in the last 3 seasons, that figure has shrunk dramatically down to just 45%. That should perhaps be a worry for fans of the club. After all, no less than 5 of their top 10 sales of all time, like Moises Caicedo, Alexis McAllister and Dennis Undav, came from this other category, while just 3 signings from within English football or Europe's top 5 leagues feature in the top 10. In no uncertain terms, Brighton's ability to find these players from the relative backwaters of football is exactly what made them such a special club and got them to where they are today. And a shift away from that recruitment strategy could have serious consequences for the club going forward. And yet this might just be the cost of success for Brighton. I'm sure the club would absolutely love to continue signing players from relatively nowhere and turning them into world-class players after joining from Argentina or Scandinavia or Belgium, but it might just be a simple case that for an ambitious club in the mid-table in the Premier League like Brighton, there just is far more need to buy ready-made players when you continue to sell your stars each and every summer. Even, crucially, if that means you have less time and money to scout and sign long-term prospects who need a couple of years to get up to the speed of the Premier League. At the end of the day, the real world isn't Football Manager, and Brighton are just as susceptible to the changing winds of football as any other club in the Premier League. They're just built on stronger foundations and can weather the storm a little bit better than other mid-table clubs in the Premier League. But there's no doubt that Brighton's recruitment strategy is changing ever so slightly from one season to the next. It'll be interesting to see if this change is what's needed to take Brighton to the next level in English football, or if this departure from the plan that got them to where they are now proves to be a huge mistake in the years to come.